Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories that go deeper than the headlines and explore the human truth behind the rumors. For most of his life, B. Howard carried a weight he never asked for, a shadow that followed him from childhood into adulthood without his permission. It wasn't a scandal he created or a story he benefited from, but a rumor that grew louder with time, attaching itself to his identity, no matter how hard he tried to move forward. Long before social media magnified speculation, whispers had already begun, quietly shaping how people saw him before they even knew his name. Each performance, each interview, each moment he stepped into the public eye came with an unspoken question hanging in the air. It wasn't about his talent or his work ethic. It was about who people thought he might be connected to. Over time, that question stopped feeling like curiosity and started feeling like a sentence. A narrative written by strangers that he was expected to live inside, explain, or somehow escape. And the hardest part wasn't the rumor itself. It was the way silence was interpreted as guilt, and privacy was mistaken for secrecy. For B. Howard, growing up meant learning how to exist while the world debated who he was before he ever had the chance to define himself. B. Howard's story didn't begin with controversy or fame. It began quietly, shaped by discipline, structure, and a family that believed deeply in education and self-improvement. Born on April 2nd, he spent his early years moving between Los Angeles and Chicago, balancing two very different worlds. On one side, there was the creativity and energy of music-driven environments. On the other, there was structure, academic pressure, and high expectations. He attended Marva Collins Preparatory School, an institution known for demanding excellence, and by all accounts, he thrived there. Teachers saw him as focused, intelligent, and unusually disciplined for his age. Music entered his life naturally, not as a shortcut to fame, but as a passion he was willing to work for. Choir rehearsals, vocal training, long practice hours, none of it felt forced. It felt like purpose. Yet even in those early years, before interviews and stages, people began noticing similarities. His voice, his tone, the way he moved, the way he carried himself. At first, the comparisons seemed harmless, but over time they became something else entirely. As B. Howard entered his teenage years, the comparisons grew sharper, more specific, and more intrusive. It was no longer just admiration. It was speculation. People didn't simply say he reminded them of Michael Jackson. They began asking questions loaded with assumptions. Friends, strangers, and eventually media figures all seemed to circle the same idea. The resemblance wasn't just physical, they said. It was vocal, emotional, almost spiritual. By the time B. Howard started stepping into professional music spaces, the rumor had already developed a life of its own. Interviewers asked questions that weren't really questions at all, but invitations for confirmation. Are you related? Are you his son? Each time, B. Howard redirected the conversation, emphasizing his work, his independence, and his refusal to claim something that wasn't his to claim. He stated clearly that he had never presented himself as Michael Jackson's son. But the more he avoided feeding the speculation, the more people assumed there must be something hidden underneath. Silence, in the public imagination, became evidence. And slowly, a young artist trying to earn credibility found himself trapped inside a mystery he never created. As the internet expanded, so did the rumor. Online forums, fan pages, and gossip sites began collecting coincidences and turning them into conclusions. His mother, Mickey Howard, became a central figure in the story. She was a respected R&B singer who found success in the 1980s and had professional ties to major industry figures, including Joe Jackson. That connection alone was enough to ignite theories. Fans dug into timelines, nicknames, lyrics, and photographs, treating each detail as a puzzle piece. Mickey had once been called Billy, a nickname that people quickly linked to Billie Jean, one of Michael Jackson's most iconic songs. To outsiders, it felt too poetic to be accidental. To B. Howard, it felt invasive. While the public constructed theories, he was grinding behind the scenes, writing songs, producing music, sleeping in studios, and trying to be taken seriously as an artist. He wasn't chasing headlines. He was chasing respect. But no matter how hard he worked, the rumor followed him into every room, waiting to surface the moment his name was mentioned. Everything reached a breaking point in 2014 when a supposed DNA test exploded across the internet. A live-streamed press conference claimed scientific proof that the world had been waiting for. According to the report, B. Howard shared a 99.9% DNA match with Michael Jackson, allegedly sourced from an old orthodontic device. Headlines spread at lightning speed. Social media erupted. Blogs declared the mystery solved. But there was one critical detail missing. B. Howard had nothing to do with it. He hadn't submitted DNA. He hadn't requested testing. He hadn't contacted media outlets. He hadn't even known it was happening until it was already viral. Watching from a distance, he saw his life being rewritten in real time by strangers holding paperwork he had never authorized. When he finally spoke publicly, his response was measured but firm. He denied initiating the story, denied financial motives, and denied ever claiming Michael Jackson as his father. Yet even then, the damage was done. The rumor had crossed from speculation into perceived proof. As quickly as the DNA story spread, it began to unravel. Internet users noticed inconsistencies almost immediately. The laboratory named on the document couldn't be found. The logo matched a fictional company from a science fiction movie. Investigators discovered there was no verified chain of custody for the alleged DNA sample. What had been presented as science turned out to be fiction layered on top of obsession. But corrections never travel as fast as scandal. Even after the test was exposed as a hoax, many people clung to the idea that it must point to something deeper. That's when a new theory emerged, one that shifted focus away from Michael Jackson and toward his father, Joe Jackson. Industry whispers suggested that perhaps the DNA matched Joe instead. The idea gained traction quickly. It explained the resemblance without challenging Michael's legacy. And once again, B. Howard found himself trapped inside a story he didn't consent to. The Joe Jackson theory felt more believable to some fans because of timing and proximity. Mickey Howard had worked closely with Joe Jackson during the early 1980s, a period when he was known for maintaining relationships outside his marriage. B. Howard was born in 1981, during the peak of that professional connection. Photographs comparing Joe Jackson in his younger years to B. Howard began circulating online. People pointed out similarities in facial structure, expression, and presence. For many, it felt like confirmation hiding in plain sight. Joe Jackson, however, never addressed the rumor publicly before his death in 2018. His silence only fueled speculation. To the public, unanswered questions felt intentional. To B. Howard, they felt like another wall closing in. No matter which version people believed, Michael or Joe, the result was the same. His identity was being debated without his consent, and his work was being overshadowed by a narrative he never chose. Amid the chaos, Mickey Howard finally spoke. Her response was not dramatic or sensational. It was tired, controlled, and deeply human. She denied ever having a romantic relationship with Michael Jackson and rejected the idea that she was the inspiration behind Billie Jean. She explained that she learned about the DNA test the same way the public did, through television. Her frustration wasn't just about gossip. It was about her integrity as a mother and a woman. She had lived a life filled with struggle, survival, and honesty, openly discussing addiction, abusive relationships, and personal failures in her later biopic. Yet none of that vulnerability seemed to matter once the rumor machine took hold. Even when singer Ozzy Johnson publicly claimed to be B. Howard's biological father and said he had documentation to support it, the world barely listened. The truth was too ordinary. It didn't satisfy the mythology people wanted. Eventually, B. Howard decided to speak for himself, not to reveal a shocking secret, but to reclaim his voice. When he finally addressed the rumors directly, there was no confession, no dramatic twist, no legacy claim. Instead, he offered something far more grounded. He explained that his connection to Michael Jackson was rooted in influence, not blood. Like countless artists, he studied Michael's work, his technique, his delivery, and his emotional precision. He admired him deeply. He learned from him, but admiration, he made clear, was not inheritance. He stated plainly that he had never claimed to be Michael Jackson's son and never intended to ride on anyone else's legacy. What hurt him most wasn't the curiosity. It was the way the rumor erased his individuality. He spoke about the emotional cost of growing up under constant comparison, how every success felt questioned, every failure magnified. How people listened to his voice not to hear his message, but to search for echoes. He described the exhaustion of being treated like evidence instead of a person. Despite it all, he remained respectful. He didn't insult fans or dismiss curiosity. He simply asked to be seen for his work, to be allowed to exist without being dissected. When fans finally heard him speak, reactions were mixed. Some accepted his words, others remained unconvinced, but something shifted. For the first time, the focus moved from mystery to humanity. In the end, B. Howard's story isn't about DNA or hidden legacies. It's about what happens when speculation becomes identity and silence becomes suspicion. It's about the pressure of being compared to someone the world considers untouchable. And it's about the courage it takes to stand still while the world tries to define you. Whether the rumors ever truly die remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. B. Howard has chosen truth over mythology, and sometimes that is the heaviest burden of all.